Can somebody tell me how a peaceful kid who dreamed of legendary lands and played with wooden swords went from this, to a vengeful killer raised by the man who murdered his father? In this video, I'll recap all the episodes from Season 1 and Season 2, explaining the journey of Thorfinn from childhood to war, revenge, and redemption. You'll learn about the most important characters, the battles that shaped them, and how the story evolves across two major arcs. Now let's dive into it. In the first episode, opens with Thor Snorreson, a powerful Viking warrior dreaming of a peaceful meadow with his wife Helga and baby Ylva, but the illusion fades, revealing a battlefield littered with corpses. Thors is fighting alongside his comrade Thorkel during the Battle of Hjörungavágr. Despite his unmatched skill, Thors appears weary of war. When the enemy overruns their ships, Thors single-handedly cuts through waves of soldiers but is struck by an arrow. He ultimately throws himself and an opponent into the sea, kills the man underwater, and swims away, symbolically abandoning his life as a warrior. 15 years later, Thors lives quietly in Iceland with Helga, Ylva, and their young son Thorfinn. The village is peaceful but harshly cold. One evening, Leif Erikson visits and entertains the village children with tales of his voyages to a distant fertile land he calls Vinland, a place without war or slavery. The children are fascinated, especially Thorfinn, who dreams of sailing there himself. The next day, Thors and Ylva clear heavy snow from their roof and discover a runaway slave buried in the drifts. Despite his daughter's protests, Thors brings the man inside, tending to his wounds. The man is weak and scarred from brutal whippings. Soon, Halfdan, a cruel local landowner, arrives with his men demanding the slave's return. Rather than surrender him, Thors offers 8 sheep, a huge sacrifice, to buy the man's freedom. Halfdan accepts mockingly, warning that no slave can ever truly be free. That night, the rescued man dies peacefully, dreaming of a beautiful land he calls Vinland. Ylva weeps, believing her father's kindness was wasted, but Thors remains calm, showing his children that compassion is worth more than wealth. Later, Thorfinn asks if their ancestors truly fled from Norway as cowards. Thors confirms they did, but adds that choosing peace over killing takes greater strength. As the family watches the northern lights above Iceland, a fleet of Jomsviking ships led by Floki approaches the coast, hinting that Thor's past as a legendary warrior is about to be awakened once more. In the next episode, opens on November 13th, 1002 AD, when English soldiers ambush a group of bathing Vikings in Northumbria. Completely unarmed, the Vikings are slaughtered and their village burned on the king's orders. Far away in Iceland, Thorfinn and other children play mock battles in the snow. After losing again, Thorfinn meets Leif Erikson, who tells him he's sailing to Norway to trade. Leif mentions that a warship is approaching Iceland and asks Thorfinn to warn his father, Thors. At the docks, the mysterious warriors arrive, the Jomsvikings, and demand to see Thors the Troll. The villagers are stunned when they realize Thorfinn's quiet father was once a legendary Viking. Their leader, Floki, greets Thors and informs him that King Swine is preparing to invade England after the massacre of Danes. Chief Sigvaldi has ordered every Jomsviking to return to Jomsborg, including deserters like Thors. Thors refuses at first, wanting to protect his peaceful life, but Floki threatens the village, forcing his compliance. The local men, unaware of the danger, celebrate the chance to fight, while Thors quietly accepts his fate. He later tells Helga and Leif about his past as a killer who abandoned war out of guilt, until now when his past has found him again. That night, Thorfinn discovers his father's old armor and dagger. Fascinated, he picks it up, but Thors catches him and takes the blade by its edge, bleeding as he tells his son, "A sword is a weapon for killing. You have no enemies." Thorfinn, angry and confused, runs away. At dawn, Thors leaves to face his destiny, while far to the south, Floki meets the mercenary Askeladd, secretly hiring him to assassinate Thors on the voyage ahead. In the next episode, begins with Floki meeting Askeladd in the Faroe Islands, hiring him to assassinate Thors the Troll. Askeladd questions why the Jomsvikings don't kill Thors themselves, sensing Floki's personal grudge, but agrees after demanding extra payment. To prove his cunning, he kills a hidden spy nearby, showing Floki he's no fool. Back in Iceland, the young men prepare to sail with Thors, dreaming of glory. Ari awkwardly tries to impress Ylva, while Leif Erikson secretly tells a villager that Thors plans to drop the boys off safely in Norway and continue to Jomsborg alone. The ship set sail, and Thors rows effortlessly with a massive oar, while the young men struggle. Midway, Thorfinn suddenly reveals himself, having stowed away in a barrel. Thor scolds him, but his anger fades when Thorfinn marvels at the open sea. Meanwhile, Askeladd and his men depart to intercept Thor's. He admits to Bjorn that the mission seems suspicious. Floki clearly wants Thor's dead for personal reasons. Bjorn, having no moral concern, says as long as they're paid, it doesn't matter. As Thor's fleet nears the Faroe Islands, he senses something wrong. The cliffs are too quiet and the village half empty. Suddenly, debris crashes down from above, blocking their path. Thor realizes it's a trap. Moments later, Askeladd's ships appear, surrounding them in the fjord. Thor orders his men to stay calm and hands Thorfinn his dagger, telling him to use it only to protect himself. As the ambush begins, Bjorn eats a berserker mushroom and attacks wildly, but Thor leaps onto the enemy ship and defeats Bjorn's entire crew barehanded. His terrifying strength and composure reveal why he was once feared as the Troll of Jom. The following episode begins where the previous one left off. Thor battles Askeladd's men alone, moving with inhuman speed and strength. He knocks out enemies barehanded, breaks weapons, and even saves one man from drowning instead of killing him. His mercy amazes Askeladd, but also confuses his men. Nearby, Bjorn, who ate a berserker mushroom, loses control and turns on his own allies in a wild rage. Thor subdues him with a single blow, cementing his fearsome reputation as the Troll of Jom. Realizing brute force won't work, Askeladd orders his archers to wait as he studies Thor. The former Jomsviking quickly assesses the situation. 30 men, 2 ships, and archers above the cliffs. Knowing the boys would die in a full battle, Thor calls out to Askeladd and challenges him to a one-on-one duel in Odin's name. If Thor wins, the pirates must leave. If he loses, Askeladd can do as he pleases. Intrigued, Askeladd accepts. They fight fiercely. Askeladd's tricks and ambush tactics fail, and Thor soon dominates the duel, disarming his opponent and holding a sword to his neck. But instead of killing him, Thor demands surrender. Askeladd refuses to yield in front of his men, stalling for time. Then, the wounded Bjorn seizes Thorfinn and threatens to kill him unless Thor drops his weapon. Trapped, Thor throws his sword into the sea, only for Askeladd to betray the duel and order his archers to fire. Thor is struck by a storm of arrows. Mortally wounded, he stays standing, calmly commanding Askeladd to keep his word and spare the others. Respecting his honor, Askeladd swears by his ancestor Artorius that he'll withdraw. Thor then asks leave to take his head to Chief Sigvaldi, so their village won't be punished for his desertion. Before collapsing, he comforts his crying son, telling Thorfinn to live bravely and never seek hatred. The pirates depart, leaving the villagers broken. Thorfinn, in shock, hides aboard Askeladd's ship, burning with grief and rage. When discovered, he screams at Askeladd, vowing revenge for his father's death. Askeladd only smirks and tells his men to leave the boy, believing the harsh world will finish him soon enough. Thus ends Thor's life and begins Thorfinn's path of vengeance, setting the stage for the story's true journey. In the next episode, after Thor's death, Askeladd's crew sail through the sea drinking and laughing, showing no remorse. One of them, Torgrim, impatiently asks when they'll get paid for killing Thor's. Askeladd tells him to relax, they'll reach their destination soon. Meanwhile, on the stolen ship, Thorfinn is weak from hunger and thirst, barely able to move. When the pirates dock along the Humber River in England, Thorfinn secretly follows them through the forest, still determined to take revenge. However, he slips down a hill, hitting his head and falling unconscious. Later, he wakes up beside a pond, drinks eagerly, and regains some strength, only to witness a horrifying sight. In the distance, Askeladd's men are raiding a nearby English village, killing everyone and burning homes. Ear, one of the pirates, listens for survivors hiding in the woods, while archers pick them off. Terrified, Thorfinn hides and watches in silence as the pirates massacre innocent people. That night, after the crew falls asleep, Thorfinn sneaks into the village, finds Askeladd resting, and steals a sword. Trembling, he raises the blade to kill the sleeping man, but he can't do it. Thorfinn hesitates and flees, unaware that Askeladd was awake the whole time, testing him. The next morning, as the crew clean up bodies and cook breakfast, Bjorn notices Askeladd looks tired. The captain smirks and says a noisy little fly kept him awake, referring to Thorfinn. Soon after, Thorfinn boldly appears before the pirates and challenges Askeladd to a duel, demanding revenge for his father's death. Askeladd accepts with amusement, telling the boy he should have killed him in his sleep. Thorfinn refuses, saying he's Thor's son and won't fight like a coward. Askeladd tells him to attack. Thorfinn charges clumsily but misses. His sword gets stuck in a log, and the pirates burst into laughter. With a kick, Askeladd knocks the boy down easily, ending the duel in one move. Though defeated, Thorfinn's determination shines through, marking the beginning of his long, harsh path to becoming a true true warrior. In the next episode, Askeladd's crew sail through the rain, joking and washing themselves while Thorfinn remains cold and distant. By 1002 AD, they reach the area near Gainsborough, where they discover the aftermath of a bloody battle. Bjorn realizes the fallen aren't regular soldiers, and Askeladd explains that the Danish king is hiring mercenaries and preparing for a full-scale invasion of England. If they help, they'll be rewarded with gold. That night, Askeladd meets a group of Viking mercenaries and offers his men's help for 7 pounds of gold plus loot and food. They settle on 5, but before the agreement is sealed, English archers ambush them, killing several. In the chaos, a frightened Thorfinn is attacked by a soldier. Askeladd kills the man just in time, grazing Thorfinn in the process and mocking him for being weak. Moments later, Thorfinn faces another Englishman and kills him himself. His first kill, leaving him trembling and screaming in shock. Time passes, and Thorfinn matures into a hardened warrior. Fighting in countless raids, he grows faster and deadlier, determined to earn his promised duel with Askeladd. During a scouting mission in the year 1008 AD, he's hit by an arrow and collapses near a river. A kind English woman and her daughter find him, nurse his wounds, and feed him. The woman treats him gently, even combing his hair like she once did for her deceased son. When soldiers arrive searching for a Danish scout boy, the woman lies to protect Thorfinn, claiming he's her son John. Later that night, Thorfinn sets a nearby house on fire, a signal for Askeladd's men to attack. The soldiers rush toward the flames, and Thorfinn kills them all with ruthless precision. When the woman appears, begging him to stop, he tells her to run, but falls silent as she cries. Moments later, Askeladd's ships arrive, and his army slaughters the villagers. Thorfinn watches the woman flee into the chaos, reminded of his own mother and father. As the fires rise behind him, he quietly follows Askeladd's men, his innocence gone and his heart consumed by vengeance and guilt. In the following episode, in October 1012 AD, King Sweyn halts all attacks on England for the winter, allowing his army to rest until spring. Since they're no longer needed, Askeladd's pirates find themselves without work. Bjorn wonders what they'll do next, and Askeladd replies that like birds, they'll simply go where the food is. Their next stop is France, where two rival Frankish factions are at war near the Loire River. Seeing opportunity, Askeladd decides to side with the attackers, who are struggling to take a fortified castle. He sends Thorfinn to negotiate on their behalf, a dangerous job, since losing soldiers are often too angry to listen. Thorfinn protests, demanding a duel instead of errands, but Askeladd tells him he'll earn it only after bringing back a commander's head. Thorfinn meets the attacking commander, Jabate, and offers Askeladd's help in exchange for half the spoils once the fort falls. The Franks are suspicious, but agree after Thorfinn warns that refusal would make enemies of 100 fierce warriors from the north. Jabate accepts the deal. At dawn, Askeladd's men secretly carry their longboats through the forest and over the hills, mistaken by the Franks for a dragon climbing the mountain. As the main attack begins, Thorfinn rushes toward the fortress while Askeladd's ships emerge from the woods and launch a surprise assault from the lake. Thorfinn scales the wall with his daggers, slaughters the crossbowmen, and beheads the enemy commander, his target. When Jabathe's army breaks through the gate, they're shocked to find the defenders already dead and the treasure room empty. Askeladd has taken all the gold, food, and loot, leaving only the fort itself. Mocking the Franks, he shouts that they'll get half the spoils in victory, while he takes the treasure. Enraged, Jabathe orders his men to attack, but Askeladd's ships slide down the river, escaping like a dragon through the waterfall. On board, Thorfinn throws the severed head of the commander at Askeladd's feet and demands his promised duel. Askeladd laughs, telling him to ask again later as arrows rain down around them. The crew roars in laughter, the boats vanish into the mist, and Thorfinn silently sharpens his resolve, closer than ever to becoming the warrior his father once was. In the next episode, in November 1012 AD, Askeladd and his men settle for the winter at Lord Gorm's village in Denmark. The villagers celebrate their return, eager to see the treasures from France. Inside, Gorm complains about the cost of feeding Askeladd's nearly 100 warriors, but quickly changes tone when Askeladd assures him they brought plenty of gold. Gorm's proud slave, Hordaland, once a Norwegian noble, draws Askeladd's interest when he notes her dignity despite her chains. Before dinner, Thorfinn challenges Askeladd to another duel to avenge his father. Gorm acts as witness. Thorfinn attacks with speed and fury, but is easily outmatched. Askeladd mocks him, deliberately misnaming his father to provoke anger, then defeats him with a quick throw. Calmly, he tells Thorfinn he needs more training and asks Gorm to serve lamb for dinner, ending the duel with ease. Later, during the feast, the men drink and laugh while Askeladd philosophizes that everyone is a slave to something: money, pride, or fear. Watching Gorm berate Hordaland, he points out that even those who call themselves masters are bound by their desires. That night, Thorfinn dreams of Thors, who reminds him once more that a true warrior needs no sword. When he wakes, he meets Hordaland bringing food. She asks if he's a slave too. Thorfinn coldly replies that he's a warrior and free to do as he pleases. When she says escape changes nothing, he remembers the tales of Vinland, a distant land free from war and slavery, and wonders if such a place could really exist. By August 1013, King Svein assembles Denmark's greatest warriors, including the Jomsvikings and his son Prince Canute, for a massive invasion of England. The Danish fleet advances from the Humber River, conquering 5 major cities before halting at London, where the next great battle begins. In the next episode, in 1013 AD, the Danish army under King Svein lays siege to London, where the mighty Thorkel the Tall defends the bridge for the English. Seeing the fortress-like structure, Askeladd admits it'll be hard to take, even with their numbers. He orders Thorfinn to bring him Thorkel's head, promising him a reward. Thorfinn agrees, declaring that after this mission, their next duel will be the last. Meanwhile, Floki sails to negotiate with Thorkel, offering him double the pay to rejoin Denmark. Thorkel refuses, saying fighting weak enemies is boring. He prefers to battle those who can actually challenge him. To end the discussion, he hurls a massive boulder at Floki's ship and shouts for Sweyn to send better warriors. As the Danish ships attack, Thorkel smashes them apart using tree trunks as spears. When Askeladd's boat approaches, Thorfinn leaps from the mast onto the bridge, dodging Thorkel's giant swings. The two fight hand to hand. Thorfinn's speed lets him avoid heavy blows, but Thorkel's strength overwhelms him. Just before being crushed, Thorfinn slashes off 2 of Thorkel's fingers, forcing him to release him. Amused, Thorkel laughs when Thorfinn declares he's Thor's son, letting him escape for a rematch someday. After the failed assault, Sweyn decides to move his main army west, leaving Prince Canute in charge of the siege with only 4,000 men, a decision that angers Ragnar. Elsewhere, Thorfinn crawls out of the river, battered and injured. As Askeladd's army marches on, Thorfinn rejoins them, limping but determined. Reflecting on his fight, he wonders what warriors like Thorkel find so joyful about battle. In the following episode, in late 1013 AD, the siege of London drags on without progress. Prince Canute refuses to give any orders, spending his days praying in silence while his caretaker Ragnar insists they wait for winter to retreat. The Danish soldiers grow restless, none more than Thorkel the Tall, who begins throwing boulders at their camp just to provoke a fight. When Thorkel learns that Canute himself commands the army, he laughs excitedly, eager for the challenge. Elsewhere, Thorfinn dreams of his peaceful homeland and his father Thors, who urges him to abandon revenge and protect his family instead. Waking on a quiet hillside, Thorfinn reflects on the dream and the fertile land around him, realizing it resembles the fields of Iceland. Askeladd joins him and casually remarks on the ruins nearby, remnants of the once great Roman Empire, destroyed centuries ago by the Saxons. He tells Thorfinn that every strong people eventually fall, just as the Saxons will one day. Thorfinn snaps, telling him not to act like they're friends, and vows to kill him. Amused, Askeladd replies that time is on Thorfinn's side. One day, he'll grow strong enough to do it. Their conversation is interrupted by a messenger from Ragnar's unit, exhausted and desperate. He reports that Thorkel attacked Canute's camp, annihilating their forces and capturing the prince. The man pleads for help to save him, explaining that only a few hundred survivors remain. After listening quietly, Askeladd suddenly draws his sword and kills the messenger, shocking everyone. He orders the body buried respectfully, then turns to his men with a wild grin. Askeladd declares that they'll rescue Prince Canute, not out of loyalty, but for profit. With the prince being the heir to Denmark's throne, whoever controls him controls their future. In the following episode, as Thorkel's army marches through the countryside, the men enjoy the autumn weather, joking about food, women, and Christianity. Thorkel laughs with them, but suddenly turns to Prince Canute, asking if the Christian god is stronger than their own. Canute stays silent while Ragnar angrily tells Thorkel to show respect. Thorkel explains that he only captured Canute to lure King Sweyn into fighting him. He wants a real challenge, not politics. The men tease him for sounding like he's in love with Sweyn, and he plays along, acting playfully dramatic. Later, their drunken priest Willibald runs out of alcohol and causes a scene. scene. When Thorkel asks him whose god is stronger, Willibald answers, the one who made alcohol, making the camp erupt in laughter. But the laughter fades when Thorkel suddenly senses danger and hurls a spear, killing a hidden soldier. Ragnar's men ambush them, demanding Canute's return. Thorkel hands the prince over, but mocks them as cowards, provoking a fight. From a distance, Askeladd and his crew watch the chaos unfold and prepare to execute their own plan. As fire and smoke cover the battlefield, Thorkel realizes a third force has joined the fight. It's Askeladd's doing, a smoke screen to confuse both sides. He sends Thorfinn on horseback to rescue Canute amid the chaos. Thorfinn cuts through the battlefield, kills Thorkel's soldiers, and reaches the prince. When Thorkel himself appears, he recognizes Thorfinn as the boy who once cut off his fingers. He asks if Thorfinn is truly the son of Thor's, and when Thorfinn confirms, Thorkel bursts into laughter, calling Thor's the only man ever stronger than him. As a burning tree falls between them, Thorkel ends the fight and lets Thorfinn take Canute, promising they'll meet again soon. Thorfinn returns to Askeladd's camp with the prince. Ragnar, furious but out of options, entrusts Canute's safety to Askeladd. When asked to remove his helmet, Canute reveals a delicate, almost feminine face, shocking everyone. The quiet prince they fought so hard to save is nothing like the warrior they expected. In the next episode, as Askeladd's army camps near a river, he meets a ferryman and secretly sends a letter from Askeladd, son of Lydia, to the Welsh elders. Soon after, Ragnar demands to know why they stopped marching. Askeladd reveals that Thorkel's army is only a day behind, but insists they keep moving until reinforcements arrive. Tension rises as the men grow tired and anxious. Bjorn confronts Askeladd, saying he's been acting strange since seeing Prince Canute's face. Askeladd replies that Canute isn't fit to be a king, not yet, but that his future is still undecided. Eventually they meet Gretianus, a general from Morgan WG in Wales, who ferries them across the river, saving them from Thorkel's pursuit. In Wales, Ragnar wants to sail back to Gainsborough, but Askeladd refuses, saying the ships belong to the Welsh and that crossing by land is safer. He assigns Thorfinn to protect Canute, but the timid prince hides behind Ragnar, confirming his weakness. During the mountain march, the Vikings joke about what they'll do with their reward money, while the priest Willibald talks about the true value of love, which none of them understand. Reaching Brycania, Gratianus explains the Welsh are helping only to secure peace with Denmark. Before talks can continue, Eir hears danger. Moments later, Welsh archers ambush Askeladd's army from the surrounding hills. Elsewhere, Leif Erikson spots a blonde slave and mistakes him for Thorfinn, unaware the real one is deep in Wales's mountains. In the next episode, opens with a young Askeladd carrying his dying mother Lydia to her homeland, honoring her last wish. In November 1013, King Sweyn learns that Wessex has fallen, but Canute's whereabouts remain unknown after Thorkel's attack. Meanwhile in Wales, Askeladd's army is ambushed by Welsh archers led by Asser. Instead of fighting, Askeladd negotiates through Gratianus, revealing that they only seek passage. When Asser mocks them, Askeladd urges Canute to speak as their prince, but the terrified boy hides behind Ragnar. Ragnar defends him, saying Canute learned silence to survive Denmark's treacherous court. Later, Askeladd privately reveals his mixed heritage, son of the Norse warrior Olaf and the Welsh noblewoman Lydia, making him a descendant of Artorius, the real King Arthur. Asser confirms the story and agrees to help them cross Wales safely. To maintain appearances, Askeladd's men pretend to be Asser's prisoners. During the journey, Canute finally speaks, saying his silence is caution, not cowardice. His composure surprises everyone, especially Ragnar. Thorfinn mocks him as a princess, angering the prince, but also showing his growth. As snow begins to fall, Askeladd decides to cut through Mercia toward Gainsborough, pressing on through enemy land before winter traps them in the mountains. In the next episode, begins with Anne, a young English girl, admiring a ring she secretly stole. She hides it in a tree and joins her family for dinner. Her deeply religious father warns his children that anyone who disobeys God will be punished by devils, calling the Danes evil men doomed to hell. Anne quietly struggles with guilt over her theft, fearing she'll be damned on Judgment Day. Meanwhile, Askeladd's band trudges through heavy snow. Ragnar warns him not to press through Mercia, but Askeladd refuses to abandon his loot or delay the journey. His men grow restless, and Willibald the priest continues pondering the meaning of love after hearing stories of Thor's, the warrior who once said a true fighter doesn't need a sword. As the snow worsens, Askeladd decides to raid a nearby English village for food and shelter, the same one where Anne's family lives. arrives. The Vikings storm in, killing anyone who resists. Bjorn threatens the villagers, while Willibald pleads for mercy. Anne's father begs Askeladd to spare half their food so they can survive the winter. Coldly, Askeladd tells him not to worry about the cold, because they'll all die tonight. He orders the execution of every villager to prevent witnesses. Anne watches in horror from the trees as her entire family and village are slaughtered. When the massacre ends, she flees into the snowy woods, trembling yet strangely calm. She looks up and asks God if he's watching, and if her family reached heaven. Then, overcome by shock and despair, she admits she feels something terrifying. Not sorrow, but exhilaration, realizing that true evil walks the earth unpunished. In the following episode in Denmark, Floki reports to King Sweyn that Ragnar's forces clashed with Thorkel's army while protecting Prince Canute, but the prince disappeared in the chaos. Sweyn, unmoved, assumes Canute may still live, but refuses to send help until spring, remarking that if his son were more like Harold, he wouldn't have gone missing. Elsewhere, Thorkel grows restless. As winter halts the war, he regrets losing Canute, thinking he could have built a new dynasty around him. Upon hearing of Danish soldiers holed up near the Severn River, Thorkel grows excited again and sets out to attack them, eager for battle. At that same snowy village, Askeladd's group shelters in silence. Willibald begins doubting God's love, but Canute interrupts, calmly declaring that every father loves his children, revealing a new strength in his once timid nature. Moments later, Askeladd learns enemy troops have discovered them and orders his men to ready for battle and capture the opposing commander. He quietly tells Bjorn that it's time to proceed with their secret plan. Meanwhile, Ragnar cooks rabbit stew with Canute and Thorfinn, creating a rare moment of warmth. Canute explains he once cooked for his father, only to have Sweyn reject him in anger. But the peace is short-lived. A messenger arrives warning that a fight has already begun. Ragnar follows two soldiers to speak with Askeladd, but realizes too late that it's a trap. He's stabbed from behind, mortally wounded. Askeladd appears before him and thanks Ragnar for keeping Canute alive, saying his death will make the prince stronger. With his final breath, Ragnar warns that King Sweyn plans to kill one of his sons to prevent a civil war for the throne, and that Canute's true enemy isn't Thorkel or the English, but his own father. Ragnar dies dreaming of cooking for Canute one last time. In the following episode, after Ragnar's body is brought back, Askeladd tells Canute that he was killed fighting the English, concealing that he ordered his death. Canute, heartbroken, wants to stay and hold a funeral, but Askeladd insists they move immediately and assigns Thorfinn to guard him. Later, Bjorn questions whether killing Ragnar was a mistake. Askeladd admits it might seem cruel, but says Ragnar's influence kept Canute soft. He wants a king worthy of following, someone strong enough to inspire loyalty, not a pampered child. If Canute collapses under the weight of grief, Askeladd says he'll simply abandon him. Meanwhile, Askeladd interrogates a captured English captain, torturing him to find out how they were discovered. The man refuses to talk, cursing the Danes for destroying his family. In response, Askeladd gives him a cold history lesson. Before the Anglo-Saxons, the Celts ruled these lands, and they too were driven out by invaders. Before he can continue, Ear bursts in with news. Thorkel's army is approaching fast. Realizing they've been found, Askeladd orders a night retreat. Panic spreads when word reaches the men that Thorkel is coming. Canute refuses to abandon Ragnar's body, screaming his name until Askeladd slaps him, shouting that Ragnar is dead and gone. Desertions begin. Some soldiers claim Askeladd's luck has run out and leave to join Thorkel. At dawn, Thorkel arrives and kills the deserters himself, calling them cowards unworthy of Valhalla. Far ahead, Torgrim and Atli destroy a bridge to delay pursuit, but Torgrim has lost faith and secretly plots to betray Askeladd by handing Canute over to Thorkel. When Askeladd senses betrayal among his men, he quietly tells Bjorn and Thorfinn to protect the prince. Moments later, Thorkel appears on a hilltop and hurls a spear that kills 4 men at once, sending fear through the camp. Surrounded by chaos and treachery, Askeladd's army finally turns against him. In the next episode, surrounded by his mutinous men, demanding he surrender Prince Canute, Askeladd remembers his sick mother's final words, that when King Artorius returns from Avalon, he must become his sword and staff. With her voice echoing in his mind, Askeladd faces his men one last time. He calmly tells them that although they've fought side by side for years, he's always hated them all, calling them useless Danes. Then, without hesitation, he decapitates 2 soldiers, sparking chaos. Torgrim orders the others to capture Canute, but Thorfinn intervenes, throwing knives and killing several men while escaping with Bjorn and the prince on a sled. Askeladd stays behind to confront the rest. Despite taking down many, his age begins to show, until one man's strike fails to pierce his armor, sending Askeladd into a rage as he cleaves him in half. Regaining control, he warns them that killing him will only bring death from Bjorn and Thorfinn. Thorgrim has his men shoot Askeladd's legs, and as he falls, Askeladd mutters that he's tired of waiting for the true king to return from Avalon. Suddenly, arrows fly from behind the rebels. Thorkel's army has arrived. The mutineers panic. Thorkel approaches with excitement, ignoring Thorgrim's attempts to surrender, and orders his men to slaughter everyone. When Thorgrim hesitates, Thorkel hands him an axe and tells him to fight, but fear breaks Thorgrim's spirit. At that moment, Thorfinn rides in. Thorkel greets him joyfully, but Thorfinn shouts that Askeladd is his prey. If Thorkel interferes, he'll kill him. Laughing, Thorkel accepts the challenge, declaring a duel. If Thorfinn can defeat him, he'll let them go free, and even give him a horse. In the other episode, the duel between Thorfinn and Thorkel intensifies. Thorfinn dodges every strike with speed and precision, but can't cut through Thorkel's chainmail. Amused, Thorkel praises his skill and mentions Thor's, revealing that Thor's wasn't born a noble. He earned his status through strength. If Thorfinn wants to hear more, he must keep fighting. When Thorfinn boasts that holding back will be hard, Thorkel's men laugh, until Thorkel smashes one of them, saying Thorfinn deserves respect as a warrior. Meanwhile, Canute dreams of Ragnar, who apologizes for raising him gently instead of preparing him to rule. Canute wishes he were born as Ragnar's son instead of a prince, but Ragnar tells him that true strength is learned through loss. When Canute wakes, Bjorn is in a berserker frenzy, killing anyone nearby. Willibald questions Canute about love, saying death is the only pure form of it, since the dead no longer hate or steal and return everything to the earth. Canute begins to understand, realizing that the world is filled with beauty but no love in people's hearts. Thorkel tells Thorfinn that both of them lack something and asks what it means to be a true warrior, echoing Thor's old words. Thorfinn has no answer. Using the snow as a smokescreen, Thorkel lands a heavy kick that sends Thorfinn flying. At the same time, Canute faces Bjorn, speaking calmly about life, love, and meaning. Declaring that he no longer seeks salvation from God, he embraces Bjorn and brings him to his senses. When Atli stabs Bjorn, Canute orders the fighting to stop. He tells everyone to follow him, promising to give purpose to their battles and lives, and proclaims that this is the duty of a true king. In the next episode, after falling from Thorkel's attack, Thorfinn regains consciousness and tries to stand, only to realize his arm is broken. Thorkel, entertained by his resilience, lets him recover and rewards his courage by revealing more about Thor's. He explains that they once fought side by side as Jomsviking commanders, where Thor's earned the title, the Troll of Jom. Thor's married Helga, daughter of the Jomsviking leader Sigvaldi, which makes Thorkel Thorfinn's great uncle. Thorkel recalls the day Thor's abandoned the Jomsvikings, claiming he no longer wished to fight and sought the meaning of true strength. Thorkel tried to stop him, but Thor's disarmed and defeated him without even drawing a sword. To this day, Thorkel still wonders what Thor's discovered that made him so different from other warriors. Back in the present, Askeladd intervenes. Realizing Thorfinn can't win through brute strength, he reminds Thorfinn that Thorkel values honor and pride, something they can use against him. As the duel resumes, Thorfinn fights one-handed, staying on defense until Askeladd uses his sword to reflect sunlight into Thorkel's eyes. Blinded, Thorkel is caught off guard as Thorfinn leaps up and kicks him squarely in the jaw, knocking him unconscious and claiming victory. When the dust settles, Canute and his group arrive. Now calm and composed, Canute announces that King Sweyn intends to give the throne to his brother Harald and views him as a threat. Rather than run, Canute declares that he'll claim his own fate and build a kingdom of peace. Impressed by his determination, Thorkel pledges to serve him, seeing Thor's same fearless light in his eyes. Askeladd kneels as well, offering his sword to Canute and vowing loyalty, even confessing to killing Ragnar. Canute accepts both, declaring they will march together to overthrow King Sweyn. In the following episode, at Gainsborough, Floki receives word that Prince Canute is approaching with Thorkel's army. He assumes it's a trick, until Canute himself arrives, alive and confident, with Thorkel and Askeladd at his side. Embarrassed for preparing his troops, Floki apologizes as Canute calmly orders him to inform King Sweyn that he'll visit that evening. Inside the city, Canute warns his followers not to act rashly, since most soldiers still serve Sweyn. He sends Thorkel to socialize with the nobles to win their support, while Askeladd discusses plans to secure power. Askeladd suggests assassination. If Sweyn dies before his heir, Harald, returns, Canute will take command. Canute agrees, declaring he'll build a paradise on earth and reject heaven's Thorfinn's judgment. That night, Canute, Askeladd, and Thorfinn meet Swine. The king greets them kindly, but Thorfinn senses hidden soldiers surrounding the room. Canute stays calm, knowing drawing a weapon first means death. Swain then reveals his belief that the crown uses the king, not the other way around, and coldly offers Canute exile or death. Askeladd boldly defends Canute, arguing his victories helped England's conquest. Swain praises his wit, but mocks his low birth, which nearly makes Askeladd snap. Containing his rage, he bows as Swain departs, promising to reward Canute in York. Later, during a feast, Thorkel drinks with the nobles, while Willibald shocks everyone by appearing clean-shaven. Gunnar, Ragnar's brother, meets Canute and learns Ragnar is dead. Canute apologizes, but commands Gunnar to aid his rebellion instead. Outside, Askeladd meets Atli and Torgrim, who plan to return home. Askeladd gives Atli his gold bracelet on one condition: never pick up a sword again, live peacefully, and die in bed. As they leave, Askeladd quietly admits that Bjorn is dying, and he's one of the few friends he ever had. In the next episode, in York, 1014, Leif Erikson searches the slave market, still hoping to find Thorfinn after 11 years. His companion Moles urges him to give up, but Leif refuses. He owes his life to Thor's and wants to repay that debt. Suddenly, a crowd gathers as Prince Canute's fleet arrives. Spotting Askeladd, Leif instantly recognizes him and watches as chaos erupts. An assassin shoots Canute with a crossbow. Askeladd yells that the prince has been hit, and Thorfinn quickly kills the fleeing shooter. Leif is stunned to witness the killing and is even more shocked when soldiers accuse Thorfinn of being the assassin. After knocking one out, they realize who he is: Thorfinn Karlsefni, the warrior who defeated Thorkel. Hearing his name, Leif approaches and tearfully embraces him, overjoyed to find Thor's son alive. But Thorfinn coldly insists he won't return home until Askeladd dies. Meanwhile, the wounded Canute turns out to be a woman, his double. The real Canute appears, furious that Askeladd used a female slave for the decoy. She dies soon after, but Askeladd ensures everyone hears about the assassination attempt, spreading rumors that King Swine ordered it. The gossip spreads fast, putting the king on the defensive and limiting his moves against Canute. Later, Floki reports the situation to Swain, who realizes he's been outmaneuvered. The next day, Askeladd reveals to Canute that he orchestrated the assassination and rumor himself, manipulating public opinion. He also warns that Gunnar may be leaking their plans to Swain, but says it's useful for misleading the king. Thorfinn secretly tails Gunnar and confirms he's indeed a spy. Before the coming confrontation, Bjorn, gravely wounded, asks Askeladd for one final duel. They fight alone in the snow as Canute and Thorfinn watch. Bjorn confesses that despite Askeladd's coldness, he always admired him and only wished to be his friend. After a fierce fight, Askeladd fatally wounds him. Holding his dying comrade, Askeladd whispers that Bjorn was his only friend. As Bjorn passes away peacefully, Askeladd turns to Thorfinn, telling him their duel will begin next. In the next episode, the duel between Thorfinn and Askeladd begins, but Thorkel quickly notices something off. Askeladd is calm and composed, while Thorfinn fights with anger clouding his judgment. Canute, observing nearby, plans to stop the match before it turns fatal, but Thorkel insists they let it play out between two seasoned warriors. He predicts Askeladd will win, though he admits that strength alone doesn't always decide a fight. Askeladd provokes Thorfinn, even throwing away his sword to fight barehanded. Furious, Thorfinn charges, only for Askeladd to effortlessly counter his every move. Thorkel remarks that Askeladd knows Thorfinn's fighting habits too well. This isn't a duel, it's a lesson. Askeladd knocks Thorfinn unconscious, and Canute declares the fight over. When Thorfinn comes to, Askeladd mocks him, explaining why he always loses. Once Thorfinn gets angry, he stops thinking. Disgusted by the reckless Viking mindset, Askeladd tells Thorfinn he hates warriors, especially Norse ones who fight without reason or grace. He then begins revealing his own past. Born to a Welsh slave mother and a Danish noble, Askeladd grew up in filth, nicknamed Ash Lad for always being covered in soot. His mother often spoke of Artorius, the ancient hero destined to return from Avalon to save them, but when she went mad and mistook his father Olaf for that savior, Askeladd realized no hero would ever come. At age 11, he attacked Olaf to protect her, but Olaf spared him upon realizing Askeladd was his son. 2 years later, Askeladd murdered Olaf in his sleep and framed his half-brother, securing both vengeance and inheritance. Finishing his story, Askeladd mocks Thorfinn for still chasing revenge after 10 years. To him, Thorfinn is just a dog running in circles. Thorfinn vows to kill him someday, but Askeladd simply walks away, saying he owes thanks to Thors for raising such a useful fool. Later, Askeladd buries Bjorn's body. When Canute approaches and asks why he doesn't seek the throne himself, Askeladd replies that he has no desire to rule. He smiles faintly and tells Canute, "You're the one suited to be king." In the next episode, in York, 1014, nobles and warriors gather for King Sweyn's royal banquet. The hall buzzes with quiet rumors, talk of the assassin who tried to kill Prince Canute, and whispers that Sweyn has chosen Harold as his heir. When Sweyn and Canute arrive, the mood shifts to uneasy silence. Canute asks Askeladd about Thorfinn, but Askeladd assures him that no one would dare touch him inside the city. Elsewhere, Thorfinn, still injured, wanders the streets. Mistaking a man for Askeladd, he confronts him, but is mocked and attacked by local thugs. He easily defeats them, only to be recognized by a guard who had once accused him of being Canute's assassin. Thorfinn is arrested and thrown into a cell. During the feast, King Sweyn praises his generals for conquering England and rewards Canute with command over Mercia, the richest province in the realm. Some nobles interpret this as a show of trust, others as proof of manipulation. Askeladd, observing quietly, feels confident that his plans are unfolding, until Sweyn announces a spring campaign to invade Wales for refusing his rule. The news stuns Askeladd, whose mother was Welsh. Meanwhile, Leif Erikson visits the imprisoned Thorfinn. He recalls the cheerful boy he once knew and vows to bring him home to Iceland, or, if Thorfinn prefers, to sail with him to Vinland, the land of peace Thor's dreamed of. But Thorfinn, consumed by revenge, refuses to leave. Later, Thorkel asks Askeladd why Wales once sheltered him. Askeladd admits it's his homeland and where his mother's grave lies. Thorkel promises to keep his secret, but before Askeladd can think further, a royal guard summons him to appear before King Sweyn, marking the beginning of their fateful confrontation. In the season 1 finale, at the royal court in York, King Sweyn rewards Askeladd for his loyalty and for saving Prince Canute. But then Sweyn announces his next goal, the subjugation of Wales. Askeladd, realizing the king noticed his reaction earlier, bravely questions the decision. He argues that Wales is poor, mountainous, and not worth the cost after years of war in England. Some nobles are shocked he dares to speak, but others quietly agree. Sweyn praises his honesty, yet when he embraces him, he whispers a cruel test. Choose, Askeladd. Wales or Canute. Sweyn mocks Askeladd's Welsh mother as a slave, saying that Wales produces nothing but slaves. Unable to bear the insult, Askeladd snaps. He pushes Sweyn away, declaring that he despises his face and will not let the crown rest on his head. The court freezes. Drawing his sword, Askeladd proclaims that his true name is Lucius Artorius Castus, rightful ruler of Britannia, and with one swift strike, he beheads King Sweyn. The hall erupts into chaos. Guards rush forward, but Askeladd cuts them down one by one, fighting like a man possessed. Watching, Canute realizes the truth. Askeladd isn't mad. He's sacrificing himself to save both Wales and Canute. When Askeladd grows weak, Canute steps forward and stabs him, ending the act. Thorfinn bursts into the hall just in time to see Askeladd die. He screams at him to get up and fight one last duel, but Askeladd smiles faintly, telling him to move forward, to live beyond vengeance and become a true warrior. With those final words, Askeladd dies. Canute claims that Askeladd went mad and killed the king, forcing him to act. When Thorfinn, enraged, attacks Canute, Thorkel stops him. Canute spares Thorfinn's life and declares before the court, King Sweyn is dead. From this day forward, I rule England. He cancels the planned invasion of Wales and begins his reign as King Canute the Great, the man shaped by Askeladd's final sacrifice. In the first episode of season 2, in northern England, Einar practices swinging an axe, hoping to become strong enough to protect his home. His mother laughs at his clumsy effort and calls him in for lunch. During the meal, Einar expresses his frustration. Their village was once burned down. His father died defending it, and he refuses to let it happen again. His mother gently tells him that they haven't lost everything yet, but tragedy soon strikes. Raiders attack their village, setting homes ablaze. Einar, his mother, and his sister Lotta flee into the forest, but an arrow hits their mother. Before dying, she begs Einar to take Lotta and live. When the raiders catch up, Lotta bravely stabs one of them with a hairpin, only to be killed in retaliation. Einar is captured and chained, forced to watch his family's end. Days later, Einar is aboard a slave ship. A sick woman is tossed overboard like garbage, and when Einar protests, he's beaten down. Once they reach land, the slavers wash and feed the captives to make them look more valuable. Einar briefly escapes, stealing bread from a house, but is caught and publicly beaten as a warning to the others. Accepting his fate, he realizes there's nowhere left to return to. At the slave market, Leif Erikson appears searching for Thorfinn, but mistakes Einar for someone else. When Leif leaves, Einar envies Thorfinn for having someone who still cares about him. Soon after, a wealthy landowner named Ketil examines Einar. Impressed by his honesty and background as a farmer, Ketil buys him, promising decent treatment if he works hard. Einar is brought to Ketil's vast farmland, a peaceful place that painfully reminds him of his lost home. As Ketil introduces him to his new partner, Einar meets a quiet young man chopping wood, Thorfinn, the once feared warrior, now a silent slave. In the following episode, after buying Einar, Ketil introduces him to Thorfinn, telling them they'll work together clearing a nearby forest to turn it into farmland. Ketil explains that once they repay their worth through harvest sales, they can buy their freedom. Einar is shocked but grateful, realizing freedom is possible if he works hard. Following Thorfinn into the woods, Einar tries cutting trees but gets his axe stuck. Determined to start early, he insists on working despite being told to rest. Thorfinn shows him how to make the trees fall toward the river for easier transport. When farmhands bring lunch and mock Einar for being a slave, Thorfinn stays calm and thanks them, preventing trouble. After a long day of labor, Einar grows angry about the farmhands' arrogance, calling them half-slaves, but Thorfinn advises him to stay quiet. Later, Ketil stops by, asking if there's any problem, but Einar gets distracted by a beautiful woman and says nothing. The next day, Ketil works in the wheat fields with his men, including his son Olmar, who clearly hates farming. When Ketil tries to teach him how to cut wheat properly, Olmar gets frustrated, argues, and rides off, vowing to become a warrior instead. That night, Olmar drunkenly tells a woman he plans to join Prince Canute's army in England, but when he realizes her family only wants his wealth, he storms away. Meanwhile, Einar, half asleep, mutters that Olmar should stay home, that war turns men into beasts. He recalls how his own village was destroyed by soldiers. Thorfinn listens silently, haunted by his own memories of violence. In the next episode, Fox and Badger take Olmar out drinking, hoping to cheer him up. However, Olmar quickly becomes drunk and starts ranting that nobody respects him. When Fox and Badger joke about how dull he is, Olmar snaps, accusing them of being weak mercenaries living off his father's money. He demands they draw their swords to prove their worth. The two easily overpower him, knock him down, and take his weapon. Feeling humiliated, Olmar shouts that he's a failure and wants to die. Seeing his desperation, Fox tells him that if he wants to be a man, he needs to kill someone, claiming it will make him feel powerful. He adds that there's a perfect target already living on the farm. That night, Thorfinn wakes up screaming from a nightmare. Einar checks on him, but Thorfinn says he doesn't remember what he dreamed. They go to wash their faces and meet Arnheid, a kind woman who compliments Einar's looks. Einar is surprised and embarrassed when she reveals she's actually a slave, Ketil's personal attendant. Moments later, Fox and Badger arrive and mock them, accusing them of planning an escape. They order Thorfinn and Einar to follow. Fox leads them to a field where Olmar waits with a sword. He announces that Einar will serve as Olmar's first kill to make him a man. Einar protests, but Fox reminds him that slaves have no rights and belong to their masters. Olmar hesitates, but Fox pressures him to go through with it. Einar charges at Olmar in anger, telling Thorfinn to run, but Thorfinn calmly stays and says Olmar can kill him instead. Meanwhile, Snake, the leader of the guards, wakes up and heads toward the scene. When he arrives, Fox has already begun toying with Thorfinn, cutting his chest and demanding he show fear. Thorfinn doesn't react, saying nothing good has ever come from living. Annoyed, Fox cuts part of his ear and raises his sword to strike again, until Snake's voice suddenly stops him. Snake walks up silently, punches Fox in the face, and orders everyone to explain what's going on, instantly restoring order. In the other episode, Snake listens to Fox and Badger explain what happened while eating calmly. He calls them idiots for bullying slaves and tells them they've brought shame to the farm. Badger argues that Thorfinn got cheeky, but Snake doesn't care. He turns to Thorfinn, apologizing, then suddenly draws his sword and slashes toward him. Acting on instinct, Thorfinn dodges and kicks back, surprising everyone. Snake grins, impressed, saying Thorfinn's body clearly wants to live, even if his mind doesn't. Before leaving, he warns the guards to return the slaves home and never cause trouble again or they'll go hungry. As Snake leaves, Thorfinn quietly questions himself, does he really want to live? And if so, for what purpose? Later, Potter tends to Thorfinn's wounds, assuring him they're shallow except for his ear. He apologizes for the guest's behavior, saying Ketil is unsure how to handle them. Thorfinn mutters that the strong kill the weak, but Patter insists they should come to him next time instead of enduring abuse. He thanks Arnheid for alerting him and gives Thorfinn a clean shirt. When Thorfinn stays silent, Einar scolds him for not saying thank you. After Pater leaves, Thorfinn heads back to work despite being told to rest. Einar follows, realizing from Thorfinn's reflexes that he's not an ordinary man. Curious, Einar asks if he's been to war. Thorfinn quietly admits he has, and has killed countless people, starting as a child soldier. Shocked, Einar can't respond. That night, Einar recalls his family's murder and, overwhelmed with anger, begins choking Thorfinn in his sleep. At that same moment, Thorfinn dreams of his victims and screams in horror. Hearing his cries, Einar stops, realizing Thorfinn is haunted too. When Thorfinn wakes, Einar tells him he's alive because someone chose to keep him that way, and that not everything in life is meaningless. He insists Thorfinn isn't the man who killed his family and shouldn't talk as if nothing good exists. Thorfinn finally thanks him, and the two share a quiet, uneasy peace before falling asleep again. In the next episode, after Askeladd kills King Swine, the balance of power in England shatters. Both Canute and Ethelred II declare themselves kings, sparking another war between Denmark and England. Canute arrives in Mercia, surveying the devastation and rebuking Gunnar for pretending they weren't responsible. When he discovers that his men are looting villages and selling captives, he orders their immediate execution, declaring that undisciplined soldiers are not his men. Despite Floki's warning that Earl Edric is a coward unworthy of meeting, Canute insists on seeing him personally. Before the meeting, Thorkel bursts in, enraged that Canute halted the battle. Canute calmly explains that Mercia has surrendered, but Thorkel argues that a fight only ends when the enemy's leader dies. He warns Canute that being king means carving a path through blood and war, as Askeladd once did. Canute listens and allows Thorkel to leave, taking his warning to heart. Later, Edric offers 4,000 pounds of silver for Canute to withdraw his forces, promising more if he agrees to peace. Canute mocks him, pointing out that he's being asked to leave his own land for an insultingly small price. When Edric insists Ethelred is the rightful king, Canute retorts that Ethelred abandoned his people and throne. He challenges Edric to prove his loyalty by killing Ethelred instead. When Edric refuses, Canute has signal fires lit across the hill, revealing his army surrounding the region. He warns that Mercia will burn unless Edric brings him Ethelred's head. By 1016, Ethelred conveniently dies of illness, followed months later by his son Edmund. Within 3 years, Canute conquers all of England, earning the title King Canute the Great and uniting the realm under his rule. In the following episode, Einar and Thorfinn continue clearing the forest, struggling to uproot a stubborn tree stump. After cutting the surrounding roots several times, they finally pull it out. While resting, Einar wonders why they haven't been given a horse like the retainers. Thorfinn explains the horses were never lent to them. They were simply made to do the retainers' work. Determined, Einar suggests asking Ketil directly, but they're denied by the retainers, who mock them for even asking. As Einar grows frustrated, an old man overhears and offers to lend them a horse if they help him with chores. The man, Sverkel, turns out to be Ketil's father, though they only learn that later. He makes them pick rocks, chop firewood, and fetch water before finally allowing them to use his horse. With the horse, Einar and Thorfinn clear stumps far faster. Einar is grateful, calling Sverkel a kind man, and happily helps with chores each time they borrow the horse. Eventually, Sverkel also lends them a plow, allowing them to prepare the land for planting. Einar teaches Thorfinn about farming, surprised to learn Thorfinn has never worked on a farm before. When Ketil visits Sverkel, they argue about Sverkel living alone. Thorfinn and Einar overhear but wait outside. Inside the house, they meet Snake, who wakes up furious that Sverkel started eating without him. Over dinner, Snake explains that his men defend the farm from thieves, though Sverkel teases him for being lazy. Their conversation turns to King Harald, whose protection keeps the farm safe in exchange for heavy tribute. Sverkel warns that too much wealth only brings fear and misfortune. Later, as rain clears, Einar and Thorfinn begin planting. Einar calls Thorfinn his friend, catching him off guard, but Thorfinn smiles for the first time in years and agrees. Together, they begin a new chapter, sowing seeds not just for crops, but for hope. In the next episode, on Ketil's farm, Snake investigates another small food theft. Though the footprints are mixed, he notes it's the third time it's happened and insists the culprits must be punished. Meanwhile, Einar talks with Arnheid, who laughs when he wonders why Sverkel likes them. She tells him that slaves rarely get kindness and calls him a good person, making him blush. Their moment ends when Ketil's wife slaps Arnheid for chatting instead of preparing breakfast for Ketil's return. Later, Einar and Thorfinn Thorfinn look proudly at their growing crops. Einar dreams of freedom within a few years and suggests they pray for good harvest. Thorfinn hesitates, but Einar pulls him down to pray beside him, asking God for rain and protection from insects. Ketil returns with his eldest son Thorgil, a battle-hardened warrior. Ketil says his younger son Olmar isn't fit for war, but Thorgil argues that fighting changes men, citing King Canute as an example. When they meet Snake, he presents two child thieves caught stealing food. During dinner, Thorgil shares brutal war stories and mocks Olmar for being soft. He even gives him a necklace made of human ears, causing Olmar to scream and throw it away. Laughing, Thorgil calls them Iron Fist Ketil's sons, revealing Ketil's supposed reputation for breaking weapons with his bare hands, something Ketil quietly denies. When Snake brings the captured children forward, Ketil learns their siblings named Stura and Thora, who stole flour to feed their sick mother and baby. Potter recognizes them as Snorri's family, whose father disappeared a year ago. Thorgil suggests cutting off their arms, but Potter proposes they work on the farm to repay what was stolen. Ketil accepts, but still orders a light beating as punishment. Stur bravely offers to take all the blows to spare his sister. Thorgil swings first, but hits too hard, sending the boy flying. Horrified, Ketil intervenes and takes over himself. That night, Ketil confides in Arnheid that the legend of Iron Fist Ketil is false. He's afraid of war, his own son, and violence itself. Arnheid comforts him, telling him kindness isn't weakness. Ketil admits she's the only one who makes him feel at peace. In the next episode, Thorfinn awakens from a terrifying nightmare, screaming. In his dream, his younger self slaughters a family resembling Einar's, and when he tries to stop him, the ground opens beneath him, dragging him into a pit of corpses. Einar, worried, says Thorfinn kept saying father and Askeladd in his sleep. Thorfinn can't remember the dream fully, but feels he's forgotten something important. Later, while working on the roof, Thorfinn confides in Einar about his past, how Askeladd killed his father, and how he followed him for 11 years, consumed by revenge. But Askeladd was killed before Thorfinn could face him, leaving Thorfinn hollow and without purpose. Einar tells him to move on from his hatred, but Thorfinn admits he doesn't know who he is without it. To distract them, Sverkel takes Thorfinn and Einar fishing. They fail to catch anything, but Sverkel's words linger, that being empty means having room to start over. Thorfinn quietly wonders if he can truly be reborn. The next day, the two are devastated to find their wheat field deliberately destroyed, roots dug up so it can't grow again. Furious, Einar assumes the retainers did it and wants revenge, but Thorfinn restrains him, saying they should call Potter first. Einar calls him too calm, but Thorfinn explains that after spending his life killing and destroying, he doesn't deserve to be angry. Potter investigates, asking them to leave the field untouched while he reports to Ketil. He comforts them, saying that while cruelty exists everywhere, not all people are like that. Later, Einar learns that Arnheid has no freedom deal and has resigned herself to being Ketil's property. He grows bitter about how slaves are treated, punished if hated, trapped if favored. When the retainers mock them again, Einar snaps and tries to fight, but Thorfinn hits first, punching the man and breaking his jaw. Shocked at himself, Thorfinn freezes as the retainers attack. As he collapses under their blows, he sees his father Thor standing before him, silent and distant as the world fades away. In the next episode, Thorfinn dreams of lying on a peaceful green hill, thinking his days of war and slavery were just a nightmare. In reality, he's unconscious after being beaten by the retainers, while Einar continues to fight them until they retreat, warning of punishment. Inside the dream, Thorfinn meets his father Thors, who asks him whose blood is on his hands. The world shifts. Thorfinn sees himself killing Einar's family. Thors tells him that no one is truly an enemy, that there is no one worth hurting, and the ground opens beneath them as corpses rise from the soil. Thorfinn falls into a pit of endless battle, where dead warriors fight without end. Askeladd appears and explains this isn't Valhalla, but a reflection of the real world, a place for those who only know killing. Askeladd tells Thorfinn that he used to belong here too, but escaped when he emptied his heart of hatred. Now that he's struck someone again, he's returned. Thorfinn realizes the people attacking him are those he killed. He stops resisting, apologizes to them all, and Askeladd urges him to climb, saying this is how he can be reborn and become a true warrior. Thorfinn climbs upward as he cries, and in that moment he wakes up. Thorfinn finds Einar nearby, who tells him they won the fight. Thorfinn breaks down and admits he's killed countless innocent people, vowing never to hurt anyone again. He wants to start over, to live as a man who doesn't bring pain. Einar doesn't fully understand, but respects his resolve. all. Later, Ketill tells the retainers that Thorfinn and Einar won't be punished. When they protest, he shows them a coat button found by Patter, claiming wild boars destroyed the wheat field. The retainers leave quietly. Ketill thanks Patter, who explains he understands the slave's pain because he once was one himself. In the following episode, more than 3 years have passed, and Thorfinn and Einar finally cut down the last tree on their land. Patter tells Einar that once they harvest their first crop, they'll earn enough to buy their freedom. When Ketill visits with Olmar, he praises their work and promises that after they finish sowing seeds, both will officially be free men. Einar cheers with joy, while Thorfinn smiles, quietly relieved. Before leaving for Jelling to visit King Harald, Ketill asks them to deliver a message to Sverkel and even offers them the chance to stay on as paid retainers once they're free. Meanwhile, Canute travels to Jelling, where his brother Harald lies deathly ill. Wolf informs him that Harald has only a few days left. As Canute watches children playing, he remembers their younger days and how Harald always protected him. Visiting his brother's bedside, Canute urges him to rest, but Harald whispers that Denmark now belongs to him. In that moment, Canute envisions the ghost of his father, King Sweyn, mocking him for poisoning Harald to claim both crowns. Later that night, Canute sits alone in his room, staring at the crown. Sweyn's ghost reappears, saying that Canute's fear of poison comes from his own guilt. Canute insists that uniting Denmark and England is the only way to build a peaceful world, but Sweyn warns that he's bound by the same curse as all kings, the loneliness and torment of endless ambition. In the other episode, Canute spars with Wolf, impressing the soldiers with his agility despite wearing heavy armor. Estrid, watching nervously, worries he might get hurt, but Gunnar explains that a king must be strong to earn the Norsemen's respect. When Wolf criticizes Canute for retreating, Canute cleverly distracts him and lands a winning blow, surprising everyone. Later, in his chamber, Gunnar presents reports on Denmark's wealthy landowners. Among them, Ketill stands out as one of the richest. Canute orders an investigation into Kettill's farm, hinting that he plans to seize lands from the wealthy to fund his army rather than raise taxes. He justifies this as necessary to maintain control over both England and Denmark. Meanwhile, Ketill arrives in Jelling with his sons, Thorgil and Olmar, learning that King Harald has died and Canute now rules Denmark. Ketill hopes to gain the new king's favor, but Olmar causes trouble in town after provoking a merchant named Bug Eyes. The dispute is settled when Ketill pays for the damages, and Leif Erikson, who happens to be there, recognizes the name Thorfinn and learns that Ketill owns a slave by that name, realizing it might be the boy he's been searching for. At the royal banquet, Olmar embarrasses himself when Canute asks him to demonstrate his sword skills by cutting a roasted pig. Unable to do it, he becomes a laughing stock. Later, Wolf tells Canute that men like Olmar are useless in war, but Canute insists he can still serve a purpose. As he gazes into the fire, Canute declares that Kettill's prosperous farm will be the first one the crown requisitions, marking the beginning of his plan to expand royal control through confiscation. In the next episode, a hooded man gathers Brodd and several soldiers, instructing them to mock Olmar while delivering news that he won't be accepted into the king's guard. They eagerly agree, finding humor in Olmar's humiliating failure to cut a pig. When they meet him, Brodd pretends to deliver a formal rejection, but he and his men burst out laughing mid-sentence, cruelly taunting Olmar for losing to a pig. Enraged, Olmar draws his sword, though they continue to laugh and easily dodge his attacks. Hearing the commotion, Thorgil arrives and orders his brother to stand and fight like a warrior, either kill or die. Terrified, Olmar charges again, but Brodd effortlessly avoids him until the hooded man secretly flicks a coin into Brodd's eye. Dazed, Brodd is stabbed by Olmar, killing him. Thorgil finishes off Brodd's remaining men with brutal ease, while Olmar stares in shock at what he's done. When Ketill arrives, he panics at the sight of the corpses, realizing they've killed the king's soldiers. Thorgil insists it was a fair duel, and that duels happen all the time despite the king's ban. However, when the palace guards move to arrest them, Thorgil slaughters them as well, demanding to know why Olmar was set up. The dying guard confesses that the plan was to frame Ketill for murder under Canute's orders. Ketill despairs, realizing the king has turned against him, but Thorgil laughs manically, calling it the beginning of war. Back at the palace, Canute learns Kettill's family escaped. Though Wolf blames himself, Canute orders him to gather 32 guards and combine forces with Floki's 70 Jomsvikings to march on Kettill's farm. Once alone, the ghostly voice of King Sweyn mocks him, pleased that Canute is finally becoming like his father. Meanwhile, Leif Erikson helps Ketill's family family flee by sea, hiding them inside barrels as part of a deal. Thorgil thanks him, promising payment and Thorfinn's freedom once they arrive. As Canute stares into the distance, haunted yet resolute, he vows to create his utopia, even if it means carrying the same sins as his father. In the next episode, a slave revolt turns deadly when an escaped slave kills his cruel master and burns the estate to the ground. Ignoring the master's desperate pleas and promises of freedom, the slave declares that no amount of gold can erase his suffering before slaying him. Leaving the flames behind, he spares a woman and her child, muttering that he's going to find her. At Ketil's farm, Einar and Thorfinn talk about life after freedom. Einar admits he's unsure what to do, but hopes to stay and maybe free Arnheid someday. Their conversation ends when Snake rushes up in panic, realizing that Sverkel hasn't returned home. The three find Sverkel collapsed but still alive. He's bedridden afterward, grumpy but cared for by Arnheid, who begins tending to him daily. During dinner, Sverkel's stomach growls, making everyone burst out laughing. A rare, peaceful moment that makes Arnheid feel free again, even if just for a night. Later, Fox arrives with troubling news. A slave from Kallakker's farm has escaped after killing his master and son, and a bounty has been placed on his head. Snake dismisses the reward but tells his men to stay alert. Soon after, Fox, Badger, and Lizard spot a suspicious man resting in the woods. While arguing over the bounty, they wake him, and the man, revealed to be the escaped slave, attacks. Back at the house, Snake reads the Bible to Sverkel as Thorfinn secretly listens from outside. When Sverkel falls from bed, Snake helps him and notes that the old man is fading fast. He urges Thorfinn and Einar to repay Sverkel's kindness while they still can. Moments later, chaos erupts. Fox and a wounded Badger ride in shouting that the fugitive slave killed Lizard and is heading their way. Snake grabs his sword and steps outside just as the rider approaches. But before anyone can attack, Arnheid screams the man's name, Gardar, and the fugitive stops instantly. To everyone's shock, Gardar recognizes her and says, trembling, that he's finally found his wife. In the following episode, when Gardar recognizes Arnheid, he's stunned to find her living so close after years apart. Overjoyed, he reaches out his hand, calling her more beautiful than ever, and urging her to join him on horseback so they can return home together with their son, Hjalti. Before Arnheid can respond, Snake appears and orders her not to move. As Fox and Badger approach, Gardar tries to grab Arnheid, but Snake swiftly cuts the throat of his horse and pulls her away. Gardar mistakes Snake for Ketil and vows to kill him, but Snake keeps calm, promising to capture him alive. Einar, realizing Gardar is Arnheid's husband, tries to intervene, but Thorfinn stops him, asking if he's prepared to take a life. Einar hesitates, and Snake subdues Gardar after a brief but intense fight, knocking him unconscious. After Gardar is tied up and taken away, Snake orders his men to guard him closely and tells Arnheid to forget her husband. He's a runaway slave, not the man she once knew. Later, Einar is furious and wants to save Gardar, but Arnheid stops him. She admits that some things can't be changed and shares her past. She once lived peacefully in Sweden with Gardar and their son until war over iron deposits destroyed their village. Gardar went to fight, and while he was away, raiders killed the elderly, burned the homes, and enslaved the survivors. Arnheid lost her son that day and believes the pain has twisted Gardar beyond recognition. Arnheid confesses she's pregnant with Ketil's child and just wants to raise it safely. That night, despite knowing the risks, she decides to tend Gardar's wounds. Sverkel warns her that waiting or doing nothing still leaves scars, recalling how Ketil once lost a woman he loved because he was too afraid to act. Arnheid listens silently and leaves into the night, determined to see Gardar one last time. In the other episode, Arnheid goes to the guest lodgings, hoping to see Gardar, but finds Snake leaving in frustration. When she begs to treat her husband's wounds, Snake coldly refuses, saying he doesn't care about a murderer who killed one of his men. As he leaves to see the mistress, he orders his men to send Arnheid back. Feeling sorry for her, one guard secretly agrees to let her in, pretending Snake gave permission. Inside, Arnheid finds Gardar tied up and badly injured. He tells her to untie him so they can finally go home together and see their son Hjalti again. While one of the guards mocks them, Arnheid pleads to free him enough to treat his wounds, but the men refuse. Gardar apologizes to her, saying he was wrong to ever leave and promises to stay by her side forever. Arnheid starts crying and apologizing in return. When the rain begins to pour, most guards go inside, leaving one man behind to watch. As the guard tells her it's time to leave, Gardar suddenly attacks, biting his throat and killing him instantly. With blood everywhere, Arnheid panics while Gardar urges her to grab a knife and cut his ropes. She frees him just as the others come running, shocked to find their comrade dead. Later, Snake and Fox return to discover the scene of the massacre. Realizing his men were careless, Snake notes that Gardar was already wounded and couldn't have gone far. He leads his soldiers to search for him. The next morning, Thorfinn and Einar sit outside, neither having slept. Einar asks Thorfinn if he truly believes it's possible to end war and slavery. Thorfinn explains that wars create more slaves, and peace can only begin when fighting stops. But among Norsemen, war is glorified. He dreams of creating a village where people live without swords, even if it means escaping to the edge of the world. Remembering Leif's stories, Thorfinn recalls a distant land far to the west called Vinland, untouched by war or slavery. Their talk ends abruptly when Snake's men arrive and begin searching their shed. Thorfinn immediately understands Gardar has escaped. In the next episode, after learning that Gardar escaped, Einar rushes to Sverkel's house, desperate to help Arnheid. Inside, Snake and his men are already waiting, expecting Gardar to return. When Einar and Thorfinn arrive, they see Arnheid calmly washing dishes under watch. She quietly admits that she was the one who freed Gardar, explaining that she feared the guards would kill them both. Gardar was wounded and barely alive when she hid him beneath Sverkel's bed with the old man's help. Arnheid, tearful, confesses that she acted on a fleeting dream, to live peacefully with Gardar and their unborn child. Moved, Einar offers to help her escape, and Thorfinn agrees to join. Meanwhile, inside the house, Sverkel speaks with Snake, telling him that slaves are just unlucky people and anyone could end up like them. He urges Snake to throw away his sword and start a new life working the land, even offering his own farm. Snake refuses, saying he's not the type to do field work. Their talk ends abruptly when Spider spots a man hiding nearby, and Snake assumes it's Gardar. The fugitive turns out to be Einar in disguise, serving as bait while Thorfinn prepares the real escape. As Snake and his men chase after Einar, Thorfinn reveals Gardar's hiding spot under Sverkel's bed. Gardar is still breathing, but weak from blood loss. Thorfinn asks to borrow Sverkel's cart and horse to get Arnheid and Gardar to safety. Sverkel agrees and insists on joining them, knowing his presence might prevent suspicion. Thorfinn loads Gardar onto the cart and tells Arnheid to hurry toward the southern border. Once they're beyond Ketil's land, Snake's men won't follow. Before they can leave, Snake returns quietly on foot, sword in hand. He tells Thorfinn he's not here to talk. If Gardar isn't handed over, he'll kill them both. Thorfinn hesitates, torn between his vow of peace and his desire to protect others. In that moment, Askeladd's voice echoes in his mind, urging him to decide what kind of warrior he wants to be. As Snake steps forward, Thorfinn attacks first. Snake dodges and counterattacks, forcing Thorfinn to block with sharp precision. Recognizing Thorfinn's fluid, dagger-like stance, Snake realizes this is no ordinary slave. He's a trained killer who has just awakened his fighting spirit once again. In the next episode, the duel between Thorfinn and Snake reaches a tense peak. Thorfinn, unarmed, dodges every attack with precision, realizing Snake is the fastest fighter he's ever faced. Snake, astonished by Thorfinn's speed and composure, wonders what kind of warriors raised someone like him. Thorfinn manages to land a solid punch, but Snake quickly counterattacks, grazing Thorfinn's cheek with his blade. Both realize they're fighting someone extraordinary, one a hidden soldier, the other a former killer trying to live in peace. When Snake's kick knocks Thorfinn aside, he turns his attention to Gardar, lying in the cart. Arnheid pleads for mercy, but Snake insists he must pay for killing 5 of his men. Even when Sverkel offers to sell his farm to atone, Snake refuses, saying life can only be repaid with life. He stabs Gardar through the chest. Suddenly, Gardar rises, driven by pure will, and seizes Snake by the throat. No matter how many times Snake stabs him, Gardar doesn't let go until Snake loses consciousness. Thorfinn and Arnheid both beg him to stop, and when Arnheid whispers that it's time to go home, Gardar finally releases him. Fatally wounded, Gardar turns to Arnheid, speaking softly about their son Hjalti and how he wishes he could see him again. Thorfinn warns Arnheid that Gardar won't survive the trip, but she still chooses to leave with him. As they travel, Gardar drifts between memories, holding Hjalti as a baby, watching his first steps, and the day he left home for war. Before dying, he promises Arnheid he'll never leave her again. With tears in her eyes, Arnheid holds Gardar's lifeless body and whispers, "Welcome home," as Snake's men quietly approach in the distance. In the following episode, while King Canute sails toward Ketil's farm, he discusses his plans with Wolf, hoping Ketil will surrender peacefully, but promising no mercy if he resists. Floki questions why the king himself must go, but Wolf insists Canute Knut's strategy is deliberate. At the farm, Leif Erikson and Ketil's family return first. The men are stunned when Thorgil rolls out a barrel, revealing Ketil pale and trembling inside. Thorgil orders the workers to prepare for battle, declaring that war is coming, though his brother Olmar remains silent, guilt-ridden after his humiliating experience. Meanwhile, Thorfinn and Einar are bound under guard. Einar fears for Arnheid, knowing she's pregnant with Ketil's child. Thorfinn, still haunted by his past and the death of Gardar, wonders if violence can ever truly be avoided. When Ketil learns Arnheid tried to escape with her husband, his pride collapses. Consumed by anger and heartbreak, he storms to the stables, where Arnheid lies beaten, despite her pleas not to be struck in the stomach. Revealing she carries his child, Ketil lashes out again, screaming that she was the only one he trusted. Snake intervenes, stopping him before he kills her. Patter tends to Arnheid, though her condition is dire. When Leif offers to buy Arnheid along with Thorfinn and Einar, Ketil refuses, insisting she's still his. Thorfinn and Einar are released, but find Arnheid unconscious and near death. Overcome with grief, Einar can barely speak. Outside, Ketil grips his sword, vowing to defend his pride and land, even if it means going to war against the king himself. In the next episode, Ketil gathers 350 men to defend his farm, but Fox points out that only around 100 can actually fight. Snake explains that most of them were promised their debts would be forgiven if they joined, and that their pride now keeps them from leaving, even though they didn't realize they'd be facing the king. He admits Thorgil was smart to wait before telling them who their enemy was. At Leif's camp, Thorfinn realizes the farm is about to become a battlefield. He urges Leif to leave without him, but Leif refuses to abandon him again. Arnheid's condition prevents travel, so they decide to wait one more day. When Knut's ships appear, one of Ketil's men fires prematurely, his arrow falling short, but moments later, a barrage from Knut's fleet kills dozens, forcing the defenders to retreat. Landing on the beach, Knut sends a messenger offering mercy. Ketil and his men can live if they accept exile. Furious, Ketil refuses, laughing when Thorgil reports that the king brought only 100 men. Emboldened, he declares that whoever brings him Knut's head will earn any reward they wish. Snake scouts the royal army and discovers they are elite soldiers, Thanes and Jomsvikings, among the strongest warriors in Denmark. He warns his men they don't stand a chance, but remembering how Ketil once sheltered him, Snake chooses to fight. His men, unwilling to abandon him, follow. As Thorgil plans with Olmar, he explains that their peasant army will be wiped out quickly, and that they're merely bait to distract Knut. When the armies finally clash, Snake begs Ketil to surrender, but Ketil refuses and orders his men to fire. The battle begins, a massacre. Thorfinn decides to flee with Leif's group during the chaos. Meanwhile, Arnheid dreams peacefully of returning home with Gardar and their children, unaware that the real world around her is burning. On the beach, Knut's forces crush Ketil's militia with ease. As Ketil cries out for his sons amid the slaughter, Olmar drags himself from the river, broken and ashamed that he can't fight. Behind enemy lines, Thorgil emerges silently from the water, ready to strike at King Knut himself. In the other episode, Ketil's army is completely crushed by the Jomsvikings, slaughtered before they can even fight back. Badger loses his arm, and just before he's killed, Snake saves him. Realizing the battle is lost, Snake orders a retreat, but Ketil, refusing to accept defeat, screams at his men to keep fighting. The soldiers ignore him and flee, knowing they can't survive against the king's army. One man even attacks Ketil, and Wolf, watching from afar, mistakes it for Ketil's death. He apologizes to Knut for failing to take Ketil alive, but moves to confirm his status. Knut reminds him not to pursue retreating soldiers, only to secure order. Meanwhile, Thorgil rises from the sea behind the king's camp and charges at Knut. The king barely blocks the strike, his sword nearly shattering from the impact. Thorgil kills 2 guards and nearly finishes Knut before Wolf returns, throwing his sword into Thorgil's wrist and tackling him. In the brutal struggle, Wolf loses an eye, but holds on long enough for Knut to recover. Surrounded, Thorgil retreats back into the sea. Knut, regaining composure, admits he underestimated him but respects his courage. Elsewhere, Arnheid wakes to the distant sounds of battle. She recalls her village being destroyed and calmly tells Einar and Leif that she won't go with them. She's going to reunite with Gardar and their son. She thanks them for everything, then closes her eyes for the last time. Einar, heartbroken, begs her to live and confesses his love, but she dies peacefully. Thorfinn, holding her body, softly tells her about Vinland, a land without war or slavery, where she can finally rest. When Snake appears carrying a gravely wounded Ketil, Ketil, Einar snaps, blaming Ketil for Arnheide's death and lunges at him. Thorfinn punches him, stopping him before he loses himself to hatred. Later, they bury Arnheid under a tree. Thorfinn reflects on Knut's belief that God watches as humans kill one another. Determined to stop more bloodshed, he decides to confront the king himself. Though Leif urges him to flee with them to Iceland, Thorfinn insists he must try. If Knut brought only 100 men, he believes he can reach him safely. Leif agrees and promises to have the ship ready for when he returns. In the other episode, after the devastating battle, Knut's army gathers the bodies of Ketil's fallen men. Seeing the losses, Wolf predicts they'll surrender soon and offers to send a messenger. Floki asks permission for the troops to rest in nearby homes, but Knut refuses, explaining that once soldiers enter villages, they'll start looting. He reminds them that their goal is to claim the land, not destroy it. Watching from the shadows, Sweyn's ghost remarks that the world is still hell, and Knut must continue fighting to reach his version of paradise. At Ketil's farm, Olmar returns and is horrified by the wounded and dying men. A woman pleads for him to take care of her family after her father loses both arms. Overwhelmed by guilt and fear, Olmar vomits and breaks down crying. Meanwhile, Snake delivers Knuti's message: surrender and they will live. Ketil's wife refuses and insults Snake, but Thorgil insists he'll keep fighting, claiming he can kill the king with just 20 men. Sverkel interrupts, saying the decision should be made by Ketil's chosen successor. When Olmar is called, he shocks everyone by choosing to surrender. Though his mother calls him a coward, Olmar admits he's terrified and just wants to stop the bloodshed. He apologizes, taking responsibility for starting the war and saying he'll end it too. Thorgil mocks him, but Sverkel proudly tells Ketil that his son has finally become a man. Elsewhere, Einar learns that Thorfinn went to speak with Knut. Angry that Leif didn't stop him, Einar runs toward the royal camp. At Knut's camp, Thorfinn introduces himself as a representative of Ketil's farm, but the soldiers mock him as a filthy slave. When he insists he once served as Knut's guard, the giant Drott punches him, but Thorfinn stays standing. The soldiers start betting on how many punches he can endure. Inside, Wolf informs Knut that the messenger's name is Thorfinn, son of Thors. Knut is stunned, but tells Wolf it's fine. He already knows who Thorfinn is. Outside, Thorfinn calmly proposes a bet. If he withstands 100 punches, he gets to meet the king. Though Einar begs him to stop, Thorfinn says he owes this farm and its people and won't run away anymore. As Drott prepares to strike, the soldiers gather around, counting every blow, while Thorfinn braces himself to endure the pain for the sake of heat. In the following episode, Thorfinn endures 100 punches from Drott, impressing the men who originally bet against him. As he stands strong, despite the hits, Snake and Olmar arrive to surrender. The distraction causes Thorfinn to take a solid blow from Drott, but he continues, mocking Drott and insisting they finish the fight faster. Drott, exhausted after 100 hits, apologizes to Thorfinn for doubting him. Wolf confirms Thorfinn's training and questions why he didn't fight back. Thorfinn explains he came to negotiate peace, not to fight, as he believes they are not his enemies. Wolf allows Thorfinn to meet Knut. Thorfinn and Einar pass by the bodies of Ketil's men, and Thorfinn explains he doesn't want Einar to be upset by seeing Patter's body. Knut, hearing of Thorfinn's resolve, agrees to meet him. Knut acknowledges Thorfinn's past, apologizing for the scar he gave him. Thorfinn, despite the past, wants Knut to leave Ketil's farm, but Knut insists the battle continues because Ketil's refusal to surrender led to too many deaths. Einar accuses Knut of being a thief, taking the farm after forcing Ketil to fight. Knut, in turn, explains his vision of creating a paradise, though he admits his power cannot stop the chaos. He wants to unite humanity to challenge God's rule. Thorfinn, moved by Knut's words, begins to understand his conviction, but Einar is angered by the destruction Knut caused for his ambitions. Einar accuses Knut of using people for his goals and refuses to suffer more in the name of those ideals. Knut, unmoved by Einar's anger, insists he will not stop unless someone kills him. With Knut's soldiers surrounding them, Thorfinn and Einar stand against him, unsure of their next move. In the next episode, Knut asks Thorfinn if he can stop him, just like Askeladd did in the past. Thorfinn is told to leave by a guard, who doesn't want to kill him. Knut experiences a hallucination of his late father, King Sweyn, who questions why Knut revealed his true feelings to the common men and advises him to control the people as a shepherd does with sheep. Thorfinn responds, stating that if Knut intends to use force, he will run away, leaving everyone speechless. Thorfinn explains that the paradise Knut envisions will benefit many but oppress a few, and while he doesn't know if that's good or bad, he believes he doesn't have the right to criticize it. Thorfinn chooses to run away rather than fight, despite Canute's insistence. Canute laughs at the absurdity of the peace talk, finding it ridiculous that Thorfinn came unarmed, got beaten, and still chose to walk away. He reflects on Thorfinn's actions, which puzzle him, and wonders where he intends to run. Thorfinn declares that as long as he can run, he won't fight, and he plans to create a peaceful place through different means than Canute. Meanwhile, Canute disbands his Danish army in England, reducing it to just 16 ships. This decision earns him the trust of the English nobility, who were initially fearful of an uprising. The focus shifts to Thorfinn and Einar, who agreed to build a peaceful place in Vinland. Thorfinn expresses his desire to create a world where people will want to live, a world more appealing than death for those who long for peace. Einar, moved by his words, agrees to join him in this quest. The two shake hands, calling each other brothers. Thorfinn, Einar, and Leif prepare to leave for Vinland. Olmar, who has decided to stop fighting, expresses his admiration for Thorfinn's strength and kindness. Thorfinn thanks Sverkel and Olmar for their help, and as they depart, Snake reveals his true name as Rold, the son of Grim. In the future, Olmar takes over the farm and works diligently. Snake and his men stay to work as farmers. Thorgil, however, angrily leaves the farm, heading to an uncertain destination. In the series finale, Thorfinn and his group arrive in Iceland, where Einar remarks on the cold and short days, explaining why farming isn't possible in winter. Leif adds that during summer, some people grow wheat, but it's not enough to sustain the population. Einar wonders if everyone in Iceland is a shepherd or rancher, but Leif mentions that some are craftsmen or fishermen due to limited pasture land. Thorfinn, surprised by this, explains that he left Iceland as a child and starts to question how old he is now. When they reach Thorfinn's village, the villagers don't recognize him and are confused when he mentions his sister Ylva. They question him, and though Thorfinn guesses his name wrong, they decide to let him see Ylva, who is arguing with a merchant. Ylva kicks Thorfinn when he tries to hug her, not recognizing him. After some explanation, she recalls Thorfinn's name, but insists he died when he was a child. Leif confirms he is alive, but Ylva thinks Leif made up the story to comfort them. Thorfinn feels betrayed, and Leif suggests they visit Thorfinn's mother, Helga, who might recognize him. At Helga's home, Bug-Eyes jokes about pretending to be Thorfinn, but Thorfinn decides to meet his mother. Helga is initially shocked, but immediately recognizes him, placing her hands on his head and crying tears of joy. Thorfinn also cries and apologizes for everything. Ari arrives and hugs him, and Einar, about to leave, is told by Helga to stay, considering him her son too. Ylva, returning, is shocked to find Thorfinn there. Angry and confused, she punches him, asking where he's been all these years. Thorfinn, barely standing, falls to his knees from the punch. That night, Thorfinn shares the story of his 16 years of hardship, from his father's death to his time on Ketil's farm. He speaks of hatred, death, regret, and rebirth, expressing his desire to create a peaceful land in Vinland. Helga supports him, and Leif offers help, pointing out that it will require resources including people, livestock, materials, and boats. The next day, Thorfinn visits the grave of the nameless slave his father saved, explaining that Thor's traded 8 sheep to save him. Einar is amazed by the high price, but understands that Thor's good nature was passed on to Thorfinn. As Einar returns inside due to the cold, Thorfinn is visited by a younger version of himself, asking where those who want to escape go. Thor's then appears, tapping Thorfinn on the shoulder and tells him that he already knows the answer. The two stand together in a wheat field, symbolizing Thor's vision for a peaceful future. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed my recap. Let me know in the comments which anime recap you'd like to see next. I'll try to do the one with the most likes in the next video. Also, you can click on the videos appearing on the screen right now to watch more of my content. See you in the next one.